All right, what's up, everybody? It is going to be week 5 of the dojo. Last week we went over some gate expand considerations. It was kind of like this large blob. Sorry, it wasn't as structured or thought out. Gate expand is just so hard to teach because it's gonna vary so much based on your skill level, and there's so many different iterations on how you can follow up. But again, I just want to teach basic concepts and kind of the thinking behind different situations. But it's really hard to capture every single possible iteration of it because it's just too many things there. But hopefully it was helpful to some of you who had some questions on how to play it or how to play against it. But today, we're going to go back into the Forge Fast Expand. And we spent 3 full weeks going over a single build. You guys are probably sick of that build. But hopefully, for some of you, and I know I've been seeing some really good progress from you guys, you've been making some really... it's getting to that point where you're just like, wow, like, I got the build. Most of my metrics are pretty good. In a real game, I'm starting to see it's a little bit hard to keep up, especially in that mid game, right? Like, especially in that 7:30 to 11-minute time period, you might fall behind because you kind of have to decide between, do I spend my APM on like micro and map management, or do I spend it on my macro while neglecting what's happening with my opponent, right? And that's StarCraft, right? So as you scale to the pro level, if you ever get there, how you execute in those 4 minutes is going to just come down to practice and repetition. But hopefully you have some level of, oh, I need to work on this, or I need to work on this in order for me to not die to this or something, right? Okay. Today, we're actually going to go into a variation, all right? So we're going to do Forge Fast Expand. Things are going to look very similar up to about 3rd or 4th minute. But what we're going to do here is that the Protoss is going to be given a new build to vary, and you can kind of compare against how this performs against the 1-1 build. And this is going to be basically a 6:30 Zealot timing with a 2 Archon follow-up. Okay, so this is actually no Stargates and no Corsairs, and this is actually a decent build to play. So this isn't an all-in build, and it's actually a good build to kind of pull out even against really strong players. There are all-in versions of this where like lots of low-level players will just go 6:30 Speedlots, but then they'll make like 6 gateways super fast and cut probes and not mine gas and stuff. This isn't the all-in version, and I don't want to teach the all-in version. If you want to be super donkey, you can go figure that out yourself. Just throw up some more gateways, cut some more probes, and you can go do it. It should be pretty straightforward to go do. But this is like a good pressure build that could win you the games some percentage of the time. But there is a follow-up to it where you just don't auto-die if it doesn't work out, okay? So this game, I did my usual scouts to find the Overlord. I'm assuming my opponent's at the top right, so here I'm going to get my cannon before the Nexus, right? So usually I can Nexus before the cannon if it's overpull and they're adjacent on a decently sized map. But here, the big deviation from this build is going to be a couple of things, okay? You can imagine with the Speedlot build, I'm going to be getting a Citadel first, or not first, but I don't even get a Stargate. So I get that Citadel immediately after I get that Cybernetics core. But everything else is a little bit the same, except also that I also delay my second gas, okay? Because we're skipping Stargate, we actually don't need as much gas, because we're not making Corsairs, we're not making +1 air, but we're instead using that gas to get an early Citadel, an early +1 Forge, and just banking up Zealots and then going for a timing, okay? So everything here should be very straightforward. Nothing is different. Gateway comes up, Citadel comes down, your Cybernetics core comes down, transfers probe, you still try to, scout my imaginary opponent over on the top right. And usually right now I get my second gas, but I won't because I don't need that gas. So I'm going to optimize for minerals first, okay? By the way, this build, I've seen Dragon do it. I don't actually know the exact build, and I just kind of did this on a whim. I just spent 1 game and I hypothesized how it would go, and I think it worked out pretty well. But I'll leave it up to you guys to actually figure out ways to optimize it, right? That could be a challenge for some of you higher level Protoss. Notice that as the Cybernetics core finishes, you get the Citadel right away, so it finishes right at about 5 minutes. And one thing that I glossed over was I actually started my Forge +1 at around 4 minutes. So let me just go back there. I think I was talking a little bit too much, but basically with your first 100 gas, which is at 4 minutes, you just start making that +1 right away, okay? So if you do this +1 at 4 minutes, and then you get your Citadel at right after your Cybernetics core, and then leg upgrades right away, your +1 and leg upgrades will align right at about 6:30, okay? It might be a few seconds after, but roughly around the same time. I'm also banking, making as many Zealots as I can because I'm not mining that extra gas. I have that money, and after my Citadel, I get my second gateway, right? And with my second gateway, I'll start pumping out 2 gateway Zealots to time for a 6:30 push, okay? All of this time, I'm also, well, I try not to, I was messing up there, but you're also not cutting probes, okay? So this isn't an all-in build, right? You don't cut probes, you just keep making as much as you can while you're making Zealots and as you're making the speed upgrades. And then with this build, because you're also not getting a Stargate, you can actually get this Templar Archives pretty fast. So I got the Templar Archives here at about 5:45, and this Templar Archives is gonna allow you to go for this double Archon follow-up. And the reason for that is because you want to put pressure on your opponent so that they can't muta counter you and just straight up kill you, okay? So usually a good Zerg is going to be scouting the forge timing out at front. And if they see the early forge timing, they will almost always snap go 5 mutas or even 9 mutas or something, right? So that's why this build is good, because it doesn't auto die to that, okay? After I put up my Templar Archives, I put up 2 more gateways, roughly at around like, I don't know, 550. It was right after my Templar Archives. I'm still making probes. Notice that I'm at 38. In about a minute, I should have like 44 or so. And I start moving out, right? So at about 6 to 6:15, I have 6 Zealots, and I have 2 more on the way. So at about 6:30, you should try to target having 8 Zealots or almost 8 Zealots. And then your +1 and your speed upgrade should finish. And right as your Templar Archives finishes with your 2 gateways, you should make 4 High Templar, and notice that we have right about 600 gas, right? So if you get your second gas timing, you're gonna have all the gas for this. But here's the thing. As you move out, you have to build at least 1 cannon per base, and then if you scout them going mutas, you have to make 2 cannons per base, okay? So if they're going 3-hatch muta immediately, their muta will arrive at your base at around 6:45 to 7 minutes, okay? But the problem is, as you move out, tactically, they have to deal with your Zealots, right? They can't just go straight to your base, because then they'll die to the Zealots, right? So as you're moving out, I like to go for the 3rd base or the main, whatever you feel like is open. And if the mutas are there, you should split them up. You should like run these 2 over to the top left, run 2 of them to like the 3rd base, run 2 of them to like the main or the natural or something. Or you could just go all in into one area if they don't have that many mutas and their build's not super crisp. But notice behind this, I'm making my cannons. And the idea is that you have to put the Zerg in this position where they have to like, hey, like make this big decision as to whether or not they could counter you or save themselves, okay? So I'm not doing much here because I don't have an opponent. I have a couple Zealots behind this, and notice I have my 4 High Templars coming out. I also want to get my +1 armor as well. It looks like it's a little bit delayed because I'm getting my other things up. I move up to 6 gateways, and this is just like a super monster build coming out here because I just have so much production. I have so many units, and if they don't go mutas, you're gonna be super duper strong. Okay, so again, Archon. Notice that if they do come counter you, let's say like they deal with their Zealots and come counter you, they have to first eat through these cannons to do any damage. Then after these, you can make some more Zealots. I like to make a couple more High Templar, and you can actually go for a follow-up, right? So depending on what you do with these Zealots, you don't have to throw all of them, but maybe you even come back home with a few, and then you wind up for a second push, because usually after they try to muta and they attack you, they want to drone, right? But if you throw 2 Archons with Zealots in their face, they don't have upgraded Hydras. They're fully dependent on Lings, Sunken, and Muta to defend against you, and it's going to be up to them to have really good SimCity, okay? So here, looks like I actually cut probes at around like 40. 41 should be the minimum. but that's okay. And I'm just focusing on my macro, just pumping units nonstop, getting my storm upgrades as well. You don't have to get storm as fast because they don't have hydras as fast, but you still want to get your storm upgrades. I believe I started pretty soon here, maybe at around like 7:45, right? 7:45 you start it. You're gonna get it at like 9 minutes or so. And I got a couple high Templars on the way just in case they go for some Hydra bust later. But again, they can't have Hydra upgrades and many Hydras if they open mutas, okay? If they do open Hydras, then you have all these ground units that's just gonna absolutely do so much damage early because they don't have much to deal with this, right? So it's gonna come down to their Sim City, their micro, and their ability to just stay calm. And you as the Protoss player is just gonna move ahead into 8 gateway play, right? Like, you know, you try to go with this follow-up, try to do some damage. As you get some more money, you know, you want to get like a robotics facility. You just kind of macro up, okay? And from here, obviously, the right play from the Zerg is to just go for a muta counter, and that could be dangerous because you don't have any anti-air. But this is the kind of build where you're kind of praying that they lose their like cool and they're just trying to get back on their foot, like they're just like an equal footing, and that you keep pushing non-stop so that they can't effectively muta counter you, okay? A good Zerg will punish you, so that's why this build won't be good against a good Zerg, because they'll effectively pick you apart. But against at a lower level, or maybe even a good Zerg, you know, to pull out every now and then, they might be so flustered that they can't even go for a muta counter past their initial mutas, right? And look how fast the Observer comes out, right? I have 10 minutes, Observer out, I have Goons on the way, range almost done. Obviously, like, some of these Zealots should be dead. But you can go for like a really, really early push. You make the Zerg like make this decision, because if they want to go 9 mutas, they have to spend 900 minerals and 900 gas at a time that they want to be droning. So this is kind of like, I'm going to suffocate you with a Zealot push, a Zealot Archon push, and a super early, you know, Goon timing with 4 high Templars and a super fast Observers while my economy is just like booming with 8 gateways. You're kind of like putting the pressure there and hoping that they don't like keep their cool and just counter you with mutas, okay? So that's kind of the build. I'm not really going to go through like everything else here because, you know, from this point on, it just kind of plays pretty straightforward. But I would encourage you to practice this build on single player. The benchmarks are really just going to be making sure you have those 6 to 8 Zealots by 6:30 with speed, with +1, and making sure you have those 2 Archon follow-up. If they go mutas, right? So if they don't go mutas, you can just stick to those initial high Templar and go storm. But in that case, you can probably go for a Zealot high Templar push because your initial push probably would have done some damage, right? Or at the very least, you force up some sunken colonies, you just run back home. If they don't punish you with the mutas, then you'll be in a really good position. So this is the build to play against a bad Zerg who doesn't like to go mutas, because this is like cheat code, okay? Like it's like cheat mode. Your economy is great, your macro is great, because you save all that money instead of going Corsairs into ground units, and this is just a lot of injustice for a lot of Zergs out there. So hopefully that was helpful, and see you guys next week.